Good morning. So this is Nishant here, and thank you for joining us for this exciting session on the second day of SME Talent Week. So this session we are actually discussing talent planning and recruitment, hiring as you grow, with Professor Amit Jain, Assistant Professor of Strategy at Indian School of Business. So I'll briefly set the context first before we move on to the session with Professor Amit. So this session is a deep dive on how scaling organizations can optimally plan their recruitment strategy and what source of talent works best in what stages of growth and how to get ahead of the talent war. So Professor Amit has done a lot of research in the area in terms of firms' human capital strategies and what are they, how to generate a competitive advantage from them, and what are the other conditions under which these strategies are effective. So before I move on, I'll also take a few minutes to actually introduce to you Professor Amit Jain. So Amit Jain is a professor of strategy in the Indian School of Business, I already mentioned, in Hyderabad. He has a PhD in strategy and entrepreneurship from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign and a BBA in business management and organization from the University of Miami. He seeks to advance this area of research in strategic human capital literature by explaining how, when, and with what performance effects firms engage in these human capital strategies. At ISB, he teaches strategic talent management in the postgraduate program. AJ, as he likes to call himself, also enjoys swimming, playing frisbee, and practicing martial arts. So it's great to have you with us, and thank you for taking the time out to share your views at SME Talent Week. We also like to urge our viewers to use the comment box on the side to share your views, share your comments, and of course, share your questions with, and Professor Amit will actually be taking those questions up at the end of the session. And you know, he's a professor, so he likes people who ask questions. So don't forget to share your questions. You can share as many as you want. And of course, make sure that you share your learning, your views on using hashtag SME Talent on social platforms as well. So without further delay, let me hand over to you to Professor Amit to take us through the session. Professor Amit, over to you.
Thank you, Nishant. As Nishant says, do ask questions, and if we don't get to it, I will personally try to get to it later. But thank you for coming and listening to my session today. As Nishant said, I am a professor at ISB, and I am passionate about the topic of talent management. I teach a course in it. And so I'm going to share my slides now so you can see what I'm going to talk about today. Talent planning and recruitment. So the questions that this session will address is first, assuming you have a vision and want to hire, and I'm assuming that you covered some of this yesterday. And so now, following your strategy of what you want to do, the first question we're going to address is where to hire from. And the second is when to hire from these three sources. So three sources I'm going to discuss are the most common sources: build, buy, and contract. So if we take a step back and look at India's sector-wise distribution in GDP over the last 65 years, we've noticed a steady decline in agriculture. Industry or manufacturing has been relatively stable, has been a little bit up in like a little mountain, sort of. But the one that's been exponential or peaking is services. And so today, services account for 66% of the GDP, agriculture and manufacturing about 17 each. And the reason this is important to know that service knowledge type work dominates is because managing talent of service workers is particularly challenging compared to labor workers. If you look at how do firms generate value and profits, we see that growth of the firm automatically increases profits. And this is important to understand because your service workers are the ones who are going to try to appropriate more value from the firm than labor workers. So increasing the value will increase profits. And if you look at service workers over time, unlike labor workers where they're put on the job and immediately can contribute with minimal training, service workers are profitable over time. And what this screen shows is on the red dotted line is the cost of an employee. So once they join your organization at time 0, they're already commanding a fixed wage, which is relatively high compared to how much value they're generating. They're generating almost no value. They don't know the organization. They don't know their job. However, over time, through training and development and learning and understanding your firm, their value is going to increase. They're going to generate value either directly to clients or indirectly through other work. And eventually there's an inflection point here where the value they generate is going to exceed the cost that they are to your organization. Now, this time inflection point could be 3 weeks, 3 months, even 3 years. And so as an organization, you need to plan for how to reach that. And so as you move up the slide, up the green arrow, green line, what you see is that at a certain point in time, you're generating more value, the employee, than the cost of the employee. And again, it declines. But this gap, this is where the firm is generating value from their employee and where they're reaping the most benefits. And so essentially, do you want to get someone who's a build category, which is, you know, someone basically straight from the straight when you bring them in, or do you want to bring them in where they're already experienced? And so mid-levels are the way to go, but this is not easy. So if you look at the changing multi-generational workforce, we notice that the world is graying, but India is getting younger. By 2020, the average age of China will be 37, US will be 37, Western Europe will be 45, Japan will be 48. India is going to be 29 years of age. And so what this suggests is that firms are not going to have the experience that they need in the organization. They may not be able to buy, they may have to make. More than half of India's population right now is less than 25 years of age and likely do not possess the skills needed to work. And so what are other firms doing? Aditya Birla Group is grooming and not hiring. They've categorically stated that it will freeze hiring at senior levels and groom talent from within to take up leadership roles. And so the company wants to ensure that employees get the opportunity to build their careers within the company.
Hello, Amit?
Yes.
Yes, so sorry to interrupt. Yeah, the slides have just moved actually. The slides were not moving.
Oh, they were not moving?
Okay. Now it's fine. Please go ahead. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Sure. Is it moving now?
Yes, it's moving now.
Okay,
look,
perfect.
It's in the Aditya Birla slide, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So so as I mentioned, Aditya Birla Group is grooming, not hiring. The company plans to stop hiring externally for positions starting from the deputy general manager to profit center heads from January 1st. So that was last year. Then is novice development the best way to go? Do you want to build since the talent that you want experienced is not available? So if you look at the relationship between within an organization and who you're hiring from, at the CEO level, you can see that you want to probably hire a manager, promote a manager from within the organization, or you can hire a CEO across another organization, or promote a manager from a different firm into your organization. These are 3 options you have. Let's take a step down. At the manager level, you can promote an existing employee, poach a manager from another firm, poach a CEO and drop them down to a manager level, bring in an employee and promote them from another firm, or hire from that employment market. Getting a CEO and demoting them is actually an undervalued human capital classic example. Now, at the employee level, which is our focus, you can get them from outside. It's rare, but you may even have a CEO who wants to change an industry and wants to start something new, and that person may have something to add. Or you can recruit. Now, you don't have anyone to go to from within, so you have to recruit students with or without experience from outside the organization, probably a university. And so they may or may not have any training. Now, what's important to realize is that the outsiders are plentiful. And so within the organization, you have only a few members, although they may be more valuable. Experienced is the larger talent pool, if they exist. If we look at Peter Capelli, it's not neither, he suggests, and he's a professor at Wharton who's been studying talent management for almost 30 years, neither build or buy, neither getting the novice ones or the experienced ones is likely to work. But it's not a choice, you have to do both. And how you do both or strike a balance is a strategy judgment that differs across your firm, across your operations, and depends on your internal capabilities. And so the new way to think about talent is to strike a balance between both developing novice and hiring experienced knowledge workers. And management of people is often ignored, even though we see that the biggest cost is people and the biggest competencies are also people. So how do you get the right people with the right skills into the right jobs in a cost-effective way? And so there are 4 ways to strike a balance and how to manage. First is to manage demand-side risk. And so what that means is keeping a shortage rather than an excess of talent. Back in the day, it was cheap to have an excess of labor. Now it's not, because these are service workers who you cannot have lying around not doing anything. If you have a shortage, you can probably put off work to other workers. The second thing is to reduce the uncertainty in the talent demand. And so you might want to shorten or reset your forecasts. Have shorter forecasts rather than 3 years, maybe 3 months. Earn a return on investment in developing employees. How do you do that? Have them pay for their own training. If their training is general and they're able to redeploy those skills in another organization, maybe the firm doesn't want to invest in that. And the last is to balance employee interests by using an internal market or extensive use of internal job boards. What that means is you got a talented worker, he's not happy in the job role he's in, but you don't want to lose him. If you post internally, you're able to have him select into a job that he's most suited for. And so the question of where to hire from, we've talked about novice employees. These are those from college, which you want to train, develop, and bring in, and they're going to cost initially very high, but over time they're going to generate value. The next source is the buying or experienced employees from competitors, clients, the unemployment market, vendors or independent contractors. These are all sources of value. Now, what is the relationship between revenue and hired employees from competitors versus clients? Well, we know if you hire an employee from a competitor or you lose an employee to a competitor, it's not very good for the focal firm if they're losing a worker to a competitor. That employee can obviously has been working on some critical work for the firm, and so leaving is going to leave quite a bit of a problem in the organization. However, when you are hiring or having workers leave to clients, this is actually shown to increase business in either direction. Why? An experienced employee is working for a consulting firm, and then it leaves for a Fortune 500 client. Now that Fortune 500 client has hired this worker probably to work in the same industry and manage generally the organization in that particular area, that experienced employee may want to recontact the focal firm for some business. And so we see that mobility to clients is actually great for the organization. And so it's important to realize that if your workers are leaving, and they will leave, where are they leaving to, and where are you getting them from? So in summary, we want to get talent on demand, where you get the right job and the right skill, the right person. And we're not looking at labor or marginal product of labor anymore. We're looking at knowledge workers. And so it's important to realize how much value they're creating versus how much profit they're generating for your organization, as well as how much wages they're reaping. Another source is the contracting aspect, in which these are alternative talent pools. So far we discussed internal talent pools of hiring a full-time worker into your organization. However, there are also external talent pools, contractors, temporary workers, part-time workers. And so firms typically employ a combination of full-time and independent contractors in the organization. Why do firms contract knowledge work? Well, first thing is to reduce your uncertainty. You pass the risk on to your supplier. Let the supplier take on the risk of securing the needed talent for whatever work needs to be done. When do firms not want a contract? Well, contractors typically want a certainty in terms of demand requirements. They want shorter forecasts, but these are more expensive. And demand changes may lead to supplier renegotiating the contract. So it's important to understand what are the conditions where firms do or do not want a contract. In some, contract is a good way to start, but over time, firms want to transition in-house if there's this expected demand and business that they're going to be receiving over time. So Nishant asked me in the hashtag SME Talent wanted to create a toolkit for you to understand or summarize what the takeaways are. And so when do you build, buy, and contract? Well, you should do all three, but you want to do more novice hiring when you have the capabilities to invest for the long term and you can provide mentorship and training to your novice employees. Also, you want to do more novice hiring when you have unique technology, a competency, or culture that you want to preserve and outsiders may struggle to adapt to or change. You want to do more experienced hiring when you're diversifying by opening the office in a new location or specialty, or if you want to require a change in the culture of your organization. Finally, you do more contracting when you need skills quickly in order to scale or need to manage short-term demand. So this is a summary of my slides. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to some questions you may have. Nishant, I take it back to you.
Hi, Amit. Thank you so much for that. So I'm just checking the questions. So I request all of you to share any further questions that you may have on this. So right now I can see only a couple of questions right now. So one of the questions that we have is that especially when a company is starting to grow, starting to scale from one point to another, in terms of being a small startup to other, it's almost necessary that you hire from a particular source from outside or whatever. So how do you basically strategize in terms of what is the point where you actually hire from outside and what is the skills that you hire internally as well? So I know that it's dependent on the competencies that you're looking for, depending on the skills that you're looking for, but how do you actually determine, how do you actually have a clear understanding of what you want to do?
So initially, as a startup, you probably don't have the time or effort to train and develop your employees. And so the goal is to get experienced workers from outside the organization. And over time, as you realize what are the competencies you have, in fact, you also want to probably do a lot of contracting work. And so initially, these are the two that you want to focus on right in the beginning. As you get more business and as you realize, okay, where is your organization going, then that's when you probably want to make the decision of, okay, should I invest in this talent full time, in which you're going to be paying for a whole year? And so it's important that, when you get someone contracting, after 3 months you can terminate. There's no issue in terms of layoffs. There's no issue in terms of letting the person go. But when you hire a worker full time, you have to deal with all the backlash of how do you let them go or fire them. And so initially, as an organization, as a startup, you probably are just trying to feel out what the market is, where is the business going. And so contract is probably the best way to go right in the beginning.
Thank you so much for that answer. And the next question is like, who should take the decision to where to hire from in SMEs? Is it the leadership or is it the HR, or who owns the decision?
So in SMEs, assuming these are small organizations, the responsibility of talent and hiring is the top leadership, right? They're the ones who are going to set the direction. This is early on in your organization, and you want to try to have the leadership guide where the organization is going. When you become large, then you can outsource this to the managers and whatnot. But early on, you want the leadership to really take on this role of trying to determine where the talent is headed. And over time, as the organization is growing, you may become more inefficient, and that's okay. Growth is your key. How you got there, you're not sure, but it's important to get the growth. And after you're growing, then you can hire consulting organizations to help figure out how to reduce cost in your organization.
Thank you so much for that answer. I think Megha must have got her answer. So I think the next question that I can see is from Mr. Nitesh Sharma, and he's asking, how do you preserve your talent from big brands? Compensation cannot always be the answer. So that's a very interesting question. Amit, do you want to take it up?
So big brands, if you're losing talent to big brands, there's nothing you can do, right? You can't. They want to be associated with that big brand, and they may even leave for less. What a startup has, or SMEs have, is you have something that big brands don't have. While you don't have a brand, big brands, if you ever work for a large organization, it's not, sometimes it's not very exciting. You're doing the same thing over and over again. Whereas an SME, you can challenge your workers and give them 5, 6 different roles. And one hat they're a manager, one had their employee, one had their, doing some contracting. And you, that authority, that experience that you provide, in some cases is very valuable. Also, what your SME is providing, what are the products you're getting, and you want to hire people who are excited about your products. You don't want to necessarily get the top talented workers because they're just looking for the next best job. You probably want to get the workers who are a little bit lower leveled and maybe provide a little bit of training, but they're going to stay in your organization. They're not going to go anywhere. That's a short answer to that question.
Thank you so much for that. So next question is from Mr. Abhishek Tyagi, and he's asking how to hire a candidate in a different work environment. So he mentions that how to hire a candidate from an international client for international client to serve an Indian client.
I see. So how do you hire a worker from an international client to serve an Indian client? International workers unfortunately don't want to come here. And if they do come here, they're gonna want to charge a lot of money. That's like expat salaries. And so it's gonna be very challenging for you to get those type of workers, unfortunately. They're only gonna come for the compensation. And I would suggest you maybe not focus on them. They're gonna be very, very expensive for you guys.
So a similar question actually, that's from Ms. Menas, and I think for small scale enterprise, do you have tips on hiring strategies where budget is a limitation?
Right. So this is where leadership has to come in. If your budgets are limited, that's the problem you're going to face, and you need to ramp up, and you need to get clients, and you need workers on them. This is an opportunity for you to be a little bit creative. And how you get workers. Stock options is not something you want to give out that easily, but it's something you can promise to them. You can say, look, I can't pay you much, right? But listen, I can give you a little bit of stake in the company. You can buy a stake in the company. You might even be able to get some money from them. And you can share the successes of organizations. There are classic successes of organizations that started with, let's say, 20 workers, and for the first 5 years they made little to no money. And then they went public and everybody became a millionaire and retired at 35. And so these are classic stories of successes that you can share with these workers. And buy into them. Are they willing to take the risk? Who's going to take the risk? Probably not someone who's a bit older with family and kids. Maybe someone a bit younger, they have nothing to lose. So they might be a source to tap into and try to get them for cheap. But you want to sell them in the organization. At the end of the day, someone young may not be worrying about salary. They want to maybe just have a great place to work, have good colleagues, take them out to dinner. Really, they're like your family. And so if you treat them like their family, if they leave, it hurts, but at least, you're able to get them for less.
Thank you. So what we'll do is I'll move on to the last 2 questions, and we have around 4 or 5 minutes to go. So the one question that is being asked by Deepthi is, can you share some examples of reskilling that has helped organizations increase their internal movements?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't understand. Reskilling to improve their...
Yeah, can you cite some internal movement?
Oh, internal movements. Okay, so as an SME, for example, let's say you hired a talented worker. This person is talented. Why? Because they came from a top school. They have the skills, they're doing their job fantastic. But they're not happy. They're not happy because they don't like the job. Now, you risk losing them to someone else. Or you have another job available. They apply for the job. They may not have the skills, but they want to do it. Let them get into that organization. Let them do it because you already know they're skilled. Now, what you need to provide is the tools for them to learn. And sometimes you may want to not pay for that. You can say, okay, we'll send you this training workshop or provide some skills. Maybe have them invest a little bit in those skills as well. It's a little bit challenging, but that's also, contingent on the fact that they want the job, and so they may be willing to do it. Or you can actually preempt it by saying, okay, you want this job, what skills you have? You don't have the skills, go get a certificate program in this, and then we'll consider you for the job. And so this is them paying for their own skills, not having you to pay for it, but then you give them the role once they fulfill those skills. So that's one option.
Thank you so much. So what we'll do is there are two more questions, and I like this question really well, so I want to take it up. But short answers from you, I request them so that we can close on time. So first question is
my email address. So if anybody wants to email questions, I'll be more than happy to respond. Or I think we're on Twitter as well or something. I can do that.
yes, I'll share your mail ID with all of them. So one question is, how can we plan a recruitment strategy when recruitment planning keeps changing? That's the first question.
Yeah, you can plan a strategy. You can, because the hiring of workers comes after your vision. If you don't have a vision, then and it's changing, you can't hire full-time workers. So better to go with temp contractors. That's the best way to go until you figure out what you actually need.
Okay, great. So the last question, and I'll close. Quick answer for this. So the Abhishek Tyagi is asking the whole conundrum about hiring workers for longevity versus the shorter work duration, work tenures that we see in Gen Zs. So is it still a good practice to look for people who can stay longer, or how do we live with those shorter durations?
So that's a good question. The current trend is the mobility of these Gen guy, the new ones. The newbies are going to be between 3 to 7 years. They're moving like no other. They're moving because they just want to increase their market wage. After 7, they kind of stay put. So you might be in the business of hiring these guys because you're losing them, but you're also poaching them from the other firms. So just make sure you're in that war for talent. You're competing, and you're in the mix of that. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Amit, for sharing those valuable insights, some great insights on contractual, work and a lot of other recruitment strategies. So we had, a lot of questions as well. Due to paucity of time, we'll have to stop the Q&A here, and we'll have to end the session here. But thank you so much on behalf of all the viewers here, on behalf of the whole entire People Matters time, for taking out time and sharing your insights with us today. And I hope all the viewers must have taken on some kind of learnings back from the session, and we would like to hear back from you later. Do write into us regarding your session. How do you like it? So thank you so much, Amit, and thank you all the viewers.
Thank you very much. Bye, guys.